Hey everybody, Dr. Quinn here. For my April students, I have updated our syllabus just a little bit, and I've added some rows into the schedule just to tease things out because, of course, report to supervisor has a draft and a final. And the idea behind this is that we're going to give you, you're going to give me a week to give you feedback. Usually I'm doing it rolling. So if you've posted your draft, I go in there every day to see who's posted it. It's due by today. It's due by Tuesday, April 15th. You're going to want to get that in. Submissions that don't make it by today, you've got to email me and let me know. Otherwise, you're not going to get the in-depth feedback that I'm giving the students on this. But note, week 5, the draft is due. Week 6, the final is due. And then, of course, you have your weekly discussions every week, right? But I've also teased it out because the resume cover letter PARC analysis has a draft. And that needs to say final. Okay. See how none of us are perfect writers, and sometimes we see things and we have to fix it. Oh, there we go. This is what you should see when you go into your schedule. So you'll see. So for example, today your draft is due. The draft is a required part of the assignment. Go to the assignment rubric. You'll see that there. That it's part of it. So you have to make sure that you include it because it's a gradable component. If you don't have a draft and only grade as a final, you can still pass the assignment, but you lose the opportunity for feedback. The final is due April 22nd, so that's coming up in a week. So you should, those of you that have submitted by the 15th, by like say noon, we'll have feedback today, and then of course over the next 2 or 3 days. But that still gives the weekend for people to fine tune their work. For writing assignment 5, the resume cover letter PARC analysis draft, that's due week 7. That's going to be due Tuesday, April 29. There are fewer moving parts to this, so it's going to be a shorter deadline turnaround because you're going to have 2 things due in week 8. You'll have between Tuesday and Saturday. I will also, in week 7, be grading these on a rolling basis the sooner you get them in. I can't promise to do it this weekend, but I'll do it as soon as I can. To give you a couple of days to play around with those document designs. So then your final will be due Saturday. It says Saturday, May 3 before 11:59 p.m. So I'll be looking at those on Sunday. But I'll be grading them. If you say it's ready for final, I'll grade it early. And then, of course, your final presentation will be due the last day of class, which is May 6th. So please just take a look at the class assignment and schedule. I'll double check that all the assignment due dates match on the assignment feature. I'll never make anything due sooner, right? But I want to make sure you have enough time to work within that required feedback. So let's take a look at what our class says is coming up this week. Week 6. Okay. You've got the resources and the discussions. Week 6 actually starts on Wednesday. So this is what's coming up. At the beginning of week 6. You'll start with Unit 6 Learning Resources. You'll click on page 1, and you'll see all of this reference to APA content. This is in relation to writing assignment number 4, and you'll see here where it says scholarly journal article. Remember, you're required to do scholarly journal research. As I've been giving feedback, note, chapters from a textbook don't count. You have to use library databases, and I mean, you can add chapters of a textbook as supplemental sources. But we want you to find consensus. We want you to go to peer-reviewed, professional, like textbooks are professional audiences to students. That's not the same as a professional audience to a professional audience. So that's why scholarly journal articles are required. It's at scholarly or trade journals as some of your sources. So look at the assignment overview for writing assignment 4 and look at this content, this sort of how do you format APA at the beginning of the week. Then you're going to have 2 class discussions. The discussions are in relation to PARC concepts for resumes and cover letters. I will post some of my notes about that so you can see my notes in there. And of course, PARC for resumes. So you get a chance to look at the resources that we have in discussion 1, and you get a chance to think about PARC concepts with another sample document, Amelia Adams' resume, so then you can apply those concepts to your own later on. The purpose for this assignment is to use the course concepts to have you work on living documents that you will continue to use once this semester is over, and apply it to resumes, cover letters, and not that you have to apply for an actual job, but that you're mimicking that process for when you're ready. Some students do apply. Some students wait till they graduate. But one of the things you're going to want to make sure is that your resume and your cover letter are timely and up to date, and you're applying for jobs that you have the qualifications for. So that's something else to consider. And we'll talk about that when we review writing assignment 5 in my week 7 overview. All right, so you just saw some magic. You'll notice that in between the last cut of this video and this moment right here, I've added writing assignment in here. Do you see where it has the original due date and it says April 15th? That's for the draft. I can't, for some crazy reason in Leo, add the 2 due dates, draft and final. The draft is really important. And if you only submit the draft, at least you have feedback in time to consider. But you have a final due date on this assignment, which is the 22nd. The due date you see there just as the draft, but I wanted to put it in week 6 so that it's not forgotten. So that's what's happening this week. And let's go to writing assignment 4 real quick. I think I perhaps did a review on this, but it bears repeating, so let's do it. Let's go to writing assignment 4's report to the supervisor. I want to view this as a student so you can kind of see what I see, and I want to go over some of the content with you. So when we go into assignments and we go into writing assignment 4, do you see where it says due date? That's your draft due date. Okay. Your final will be due on the 22nd. I'll put that in big red letters in the announcement as well. When you click on this assignment, you'll notice you have the overview content, like you have the situation and then the requirements for the assignment. I always recommend students print those out and review them at length. And you'll see here that this is the rubric. This is my grading contract. As long as I believe that the work is authentic and written by the student or documented where it was and wasn't, I'm going to grade what the student wrote, right? So I'm looking at 1,500 words of the student's writing. I'm looking at 2 graphics. And as we've been practicing with graphics and we'll continue to practice, I want data-driven graphics. I'm really not interested in, like, let's see. Let's go to cybersecurity and let's go to images. Because what you're going to find here is like this image, it doesn't convey any information. None of these. They're artistic, but they're not data driven. So when a student submits this in their paper, they don't get that sort of reliability factor, the credibility factor, if they're just grabbing the first piece of either clip art or images they find on a quick Google search, right? So when I'm looking at graphics, I'm looking at data driven graphics, tables, charts specific to the argument being made. You can create them or you can borrow them. If you borrow them, cite them. Right? Okay. Number and relevance of, so you need to have sources in the problems and solutions section that I can find, right? And if you ended up paying for a source that's not in the library databases, please include a link to that source in your submission. Like you can put, or you can download it as part of your submission packet. I'm perfectly fine with that because I like to see it. I actually, if you look at the draft feedback, I go in and I read those sources. At least 2 sources from scholarly or trade journals. That does not mean books. That means journals. Like we've been practicing in the prior discussions. That you have a memo that's 150 words or less. The memo is like an email with the report attached. That you create an executive summary. Everybody's going to get feedback from me on executive summaries. And the UMGC sample, which I'll also embed at the bottom of this video. So you have a link to it where it shows the report in miniature, how you can use headers, how you could use major findings. That you're writing clearly and effectively in your own voice. I want it to sound like a human. If it sounds like a robot, it's not going to be effective. That you accommodate not just Mark, but the secondary audience readers. Now you describe the scenarios and situations. The quality and the message of the graphic, that they actually illustrate a problem. Right? So design and image and choice is a lot like borrowing good data. If you're citing a source, say, for example, you find a source on the web that's Smith, the 12 best ways to protect your business via cybersecurity practices. And the article is like 200 words long with no specifics. And I look at that source and it doesn't have a lot of accurate, timely, detailed information. It's not going to look like it's the right source for this level of coursework. That your conclusion doesn't go more than 200 words, that all of your documents are in APA style. Now that you're in a 393 class, you finished 111, writing 112. You've practiced this before. You've got the resources embedded in our course readings for the week. And of course that you grammar check. Now, here's the thing. No writing is absolutely perfect. No human being is. An error or two is natural. We all have habits. I tend to write long, convoluted sentences. I'm looking to hear that a human being wrote this. So I'll be looking very closely. And perfect grammar for most people just does not exist, right? That's one of the flaws, I think, with students using AI is that sometimes they're not reading deeply into how AI creates documents, and the AI does not understand the assignment directions all that clearly. And so what ends up happening is that it's circular, vague, there are no specifics, but there's like 10 different recommendations in like a listicle, and that ends up being not effective. So I really want to see students putting their hearts into this document. I want to hear you as a live person talking about this. I want to see current, timely, recent research, for example. And finally, you'll notice that out of the 285 points, there's a revision element that you incorporate. So you must post by the draft deadline, and that you incorporate feedback. Do you have to make every change that I recommend? Of course not. But you have to consider it. And if you don't like my recommendation, but you do something a little bit different that still fixes the issue, I love that. I love that thinking creatively part. If you do a little bit of it, sure. But if you either don't do a draft or you don't submit work that sounds like you, then it's just not going to count at all and you'll lose those points. So go through the assignment. Make sure that you're looking at this report to the supervisor, especially toward the end. It says, here's how the report should be organized. A memo by itself, it's like an email with the report attached, 150 words. Executive summary, no more than 300. The heart of your document is the problems and solutions. I know the assignment says 2 to 4 issues, but I beg of you, don't go above 3, because I want you to take a deeper dive into those issues. I want you to write from a space of authority with specifics and research incorporated. Your conclusion should be no more than 200 words, and then you should have references in APA style. And if you have any questions as far as what that looks like, you're welcome to reach out to me and we can set up time to conference. Now, this is the need to be persuasive. You can't just say the Wi-Fi has no password. You have to explain why it is a problem with timely research. Now, if you're using data from 2008, that's almost 20 years old, right? You're going to want to refine your research. You're going to make sure that all of your documentation is accurate, that I can find it, that I have access to it. That's a real requirement of the assignment. So take your time to go through this. I mean, I'd even recommend printing up your draft and checking it as you go. Draft is due a week before the final is due. So like I said, I'll be trying to do feedback as quickly as possible. And then it is your job to consider that feedback. And if you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. Sometimes some of these topics are like out of my wheelhouse. If you're reading about HR, I'm not an HR expert. So if you want to explain a concept that I seem to have misunderstood, or a borrowing and I missed something in that borrowing that was really there, I really want you to reach out and show it to me so that you can make the most out of this assignment. And I'm excited to see your final versions. So let me know if you have questions. I look forward to your work this week.